Yeah, let's go ahead and start. Let's get Gordo brought up on the mic. Guys, let's just try to use the hand method and try to keep the questions towards the end. But whenever there's dead air or something like that, if you want to throw your hand up, we'll get somebody on here to ask some questions. So tonight's guest is the host of the Plays and Fades YouTube channel, where he provides free content such as DFS, which is daily fantasy sports, as well as full card breakdowns. He is also a writer and works on a podcast for Daily Fan MMA. He holds titles such as the 2021 Ironman and the 2022 Lock of the Night competition champion with a record of 36-5-1 in said contest. He had a total of 77.7 units profit and a 13% return on interest for 2022. Please help me welcome to the mic, Mr. Gordo Gambles.
Very kind introduction. Thank you very much, my friend. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man. We're excited.
Yeah, me too. It's nothing like it's a nice little conversation on an off week of fights, and I heard you guys talking a lot about that, Rockhold stuff and stuff like that. So always something to keep us busy. But happy to be here.
Glad
Yeah,
to
man. Our host Joe, he's he's pretty good at keeping us, flooded with topics to touch on and stuff like that. So we keep it pretty normal in here.
Yeah, I tend to go a little overboard. The script or the docket that I write is like 1,500 lines for the show. Hey, Gordo, why don't you just kind of, I mean, I know Trace introduced, but like, why don't you just kind of tell us what you do on DraftKings? And then I got not like rehearsed questions, but I got a slew of things I jotted down. I think we'll be able to carry a nice conversation for a little bit here.
Yeah, sounds good. No, I am a primary DraftKings player, although some certain laws being a Canadian in Ontario though has kind of altered that a bit. But no, I started playing DFS a few years ago. Whenever I turned old enough to do so, I am a younger player here, but in doing so, I wanted to go all the way, give myself as much resources as I could. So I put my heart into it, did a lot of research for it, and it's turned out okay. But in doing so, I realized that it's not just about making money, but you're able to go out there and help people as well. So I've had the luxury and the opportunity to make content and hang out with some great people, such as Liam in the chat and a bunch of people like that. And it's been a really fun pastime. And then there's some great contests going around that, such like the contest that you hold, where you have a DraftKings league. I know you have that, or the Ironman contest. Just great ability to turn a sport that we love from a entertainment perspective and put a little spin on it, just as DraftKings does. So I've fallen in love with the DraftKings scoring each and every week. And although there has been some rough patches with the late swap and stuff like that, it's still been a fun way to watch the fights, and I look forward to doing so every week.
So you said you're in Canada. I'm sorry if you said where at. I was listening, but did you say exactly where you're at?
Yeah,
You like
I'm in Ontario, so I'm in the part that was banned because of the James Krause law, and DraftKings is still not
absolutely
available here. But I am on the border, so I can just drive across to go place my lineups, no problem.
gotcha. So were you able to do DraftKings at 19 over there? Like I know, so I'm from Detroit, right? And you know, morons from Detroit, as soon as they turn 19 years old, pile over the border over there and get drunk all in Windsor and then try to get back over here. But you can gamble. You can drink and gamble at 19. So were you able to actually do DraftKings at 19 in Canada?
I'll one up you. I was able to do so at 18, and living on the border of Quebec, where drinking is also at 18 as well. I was able to have some decent times.
You got those Australian laws.
What's that, sorry?
You got those. You got you got those Australian laws. That's 18 is in Australia as well.
Oh yeah, pretty much. Only in Quebec for some reason, but no, where I went to school, as soon as everyone turned 18, you're able to head up the bars on the other side of the border, and you're able to play DraftKings here as well. So I actually started when I was 18, but I was watching the sport ever since I could, right? So when I was finally able to, you know, not put money on it, but able to watch it and get more interested in it, I definitely did. And so it's been a few years of that now.
Very nice, very nice. Definitely gives you a small leg up as far as experience time, right? I mean, I guess you could figure it out if you wanted to bad enough. Okay, so let me. I'll start off here. Um, this isn't like on you. This isn't what you do, but you are like a DraftKings guy. What is the Rainmakers deal? Pay-per-view? What do you know what that is? The UFC Rainmakers deal? Do you know what that is?
Do you know what, man? I would not lie to you. I have no interest in that, and I have not looked into it at all. I know it's some of the heavier contest prizes, and I should be looking into it more, but I have really, really stayed away from it. I haven't even opened up the packs that they've given me, so I'm not the best to ask about that.
Oh, so you get packs. I just seen a advertisement today, so I'm like, man, I don't even know what that is.
And you know what, man? I'm sure they are pretty cool, but that's just not something I've gotten into too much, and I'm probably not the best guy to ask about. I don't want to spread misinformation.
Yeah, very, very. Like I'm not even really sure, but just from what I gathered from it, it sounds like you open card packs and then you have those cards available to play. Or I guess you can purchase more. I'm not really sure how it works, but it sounds like it's almost like fantasy, but with
But
cards.
he's incorporated maybe or something as
Yeah,
well.
it's like I guess you have to have ownership of that player to use that player. I'm not really sure though. Like so, that's just me glancing over it.
That's weird. I mean, good idea, I guess. It kind of incorporates like what they do at what is that, UFC Strike or Prediction Strike? Prediction Strike, I think it is. You can buy stocks and players and sell them. Here, Gordo, we had someone in here, the Degenerate 75, that we talked a little bit about DraftKings. So most of the guys listen to this are pretty familiar. So we don't have to go to the what is DraftKings and how does it work level. We can kind of jump past that. And I'd like to ask you about some of your strategy. First question I'll give you is this. I gave this question to the Degenerate too, and I thought it was one worth holding on to talk to anybody who does well in DFS. If you had $100 to play, um, I know whatever it's $100, but if you had $100 to play, are you most likely to enter a competition where you can put in one strong lineup for $100, a $50 competition where you can put in two decent lineups, five $20 contests, 10 $10 contests, or 20 entries at $5 into one contest? I mean, like, would you hammer a lower entry contest, or put a strong lineup in a higher entry contest and just bank on that lineup? How would you handle that?
You know what, man? It's so much dependent on the slate, and there are certain cards like the last one we had last week in the pay-per-view. That's one where you want to throw in as many lineups as you can because so many of these matchups have so much volatility, and not only there being 15 of them, but with what 6, 7, 8 of them having minus 900 off of the distance, there are so many points up for grabs, and it was just one I didn't feel confident enough putting only one line in because there are so many fights you want to target, right? If you get the McKinney versus Bonfim fight wrong, your one lineup you put in there is dead, right? So for me, a card like that is something I want to play more on the conservative side or on the riskier side. Go out there, spread as many lineups as I can, try to get all the possible combinations, right? But on a card maybe like the first one of the year, when there is something I'm more certain in, when there are some better matchups for the guys I'm targeting on DraftKings, where I can seem just to have a better grasp of the situation, I'm completely content with putting in one lineup. I like the one lineup style a lot of the time. Just because I feel like I'm able to get a grasp of it all and see how it's going and do all my research and put it in towards that one confident lineup. But on cards with 15 fights and all of them, 13 of the 15 of them projected to end inside the distance, last weekend was one where you'd like to switch it up. So personally, I'd like to throw in, what, 2, 3, 5 lineups or something like that, but it all really depends on the card.
Okay, so no set strategy there. That makes plenty of sense to me. The other thing I know Trace has probably got some questions, but the other one want to get at you right away is, I used to do DFS. I did it for quite a while before I ever bet any money lines. You know, it was just fun. You pick up your phone, spend a few bucks, enter some contests, and then I enjoyed Spaces. Spaces is more money line based, so kind of swung me that way. But um, how do you handle like high salary fighters? Like if you got a guy, it doesn't really matter. Like we don't have to argue, who's the locker, who's the greatest, but you got a guy like that's $12,000 salary or $11,000 salary. Um, how do you handle that? Do you skip that guy? Do you try to fade him with all the guys in the middle and leave him out? Do you just eat it on the low end and try to pick a dog to compensate? How do you figure that? Like, how do you handle those guys?
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to, do you think he's going to reach enough points to be on the optimal lineup, and what do you think his ownership comes at, right? Because if you think he's going to be a super high owned guy, like say certain people thought Gelton Almeida was last weekend, you do not want to have the same lineup as everybody else if you're looking to be a solo winner, right? You want to be a bit different. You want to see how you can attack that. And sometimes it'll work out well. You're able to go down there, you're able to get a bit different, get a bit contrarian, grab some Jessica Andrade, grab some people who aren't going to have the same lineup as everybody else. But that also comes back to the point of how many lineups you're playing, right? If you're playing only one and you're looking just to make it into the green, make it to the cash, well, sometimes having a secure piece like a 9.7 Gelton Almeida is nice to have because he's minus 1,400 on the money line. He's nice to get his points, but you have to think to yourself, is he going to reach his projected salary? Is he going to be enough to beat everybody else around him? Is he going to live up to the salary? Sorry, more like that. And it's really just situational on the fighter, right? So my approach typically depends on what I think the ownership is going to be and how often he's able to hit his ceiling. So I like to build a ceiling at what percentage does he win the fight and what percentage is he going to finish. And based off of those percentages, I'm able to see, okay, maybe it's worth paying up for him because he's going to win and get enough points a lot of the time. Or sometimes I'm like, I can see a decision happening here. I can see some low volume. Maybe it's better to stay away from him. But it also comes down to ownership at the end of the day as well.
Okay, fair enough. And I just try to, I don't mean to say fair enough, like I don't think they're great answers. I just don't want to keep rambling on because I have a
No
tendency
problem.
to do that. Trace, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to steal one of Joe's questions. I think it's a good one. Do you look at the salaries before you pick your fighters, or do you pick fighters and then try to fit the salaries?
Oh, that is a good question. I guess if I'm trying not to think too hard about it, I always do have my research done typically before the salaries are out. I have my tape study, my research done maybe a week prior, something like that, just to be ahead of all the lines. So I guess technically I have a perception of what I want my lineup to be because I just want to pick fighters with high upside. But it then comes down to when I see the slate come out, it is going to adjust it. It is going to change my perception of how I'm going to play these players. So I guess it does come down to the salaries, but I will tell you, I do have my research done prior. I do know which underdogs I want to target. I can tell you already what underdogs I want to target for the next card as well. But it does come down to if I can fit them all into my lineup at the end of the day, I guess.
Okay, so do you like there's sites, there's resource sites, and I'm sure you have some that you use or know of. Do you take into consideration ownership? And like I asked Degenerate last week in his reply, I said, so generally thinking, generally thinking you would figure, all right, I got a few strong guys and I got to fit a dog in or a low salary guy, which is typically going to be a dog, right? I got to fit him in, and this guy's got high ownership. I think I'm going to throw him in there because a lot of people are on him. Or do you do what Degenerate did and assume that the public is going to be wrong and avoid those guys that are the dogs with high ownership?
Essentially, fade the chalk.
Yeah, and that again comes down to the risk you want to take, right? If you're willing to fade the chalk, if you think you have a decent grasp on how the fight's going to go, well, if someone's going to be 50% owned and you go the other side of that, you're beating 50% of the field immediately if it wins, right? So I do tend to like go for those lower ownership plays, especially in GBP competitions, just to get a leg up, find a lineup that is unique and has high upside. Um, but I'm completely content with playing chalk in an underdog price tag if it's one that I see having more upside, right? So I like to base my projections of ownership based off of not only my own projections but the ones at Daily Fan and MMA, and having those in my mind is allowing me to say, okay, if not only me but a lot of other people think that he's going to be a very popular underdog, maybe I'll stay away from him. If a lot of people think that, I don't know, Munir Lazez is going to be a really popular underdog, and I don't think he has as good of a chance as everybody else does, maybe I'll take the risk and stay away from him because so many people are going to have exposure to him. If I don't have exposure to him, I do have a leg up on the competition. So I am more the guy to fade the chalk and be a bit different. And sometimes that comes back to haunt me, but a lot of the time it also makes you be a bit different and allows you to get a step up on competition.
Trace, go ahead, and then when you're done, I'll get you on their average.
Yeah, it's MMA like other sports, as in your bread and butter is cash lineups. or do you just prefer the GPP formats?
I am much more a GPP kind of guy, strictly because not only are the cash lineups you see very similar to one another, but because this is a sport with such high variance, because you can see these people be knocked out at any point in time. I like these GPP formats because I want to be, getting a bit different, trying to have a leg up on other people, trying to put more risk into it. Whereas when you're playing these cash lineups, you're typically going to see similar lineups, people with um, who are just trying to take a safer route. I'm more of a go big or go home kind of guy, and not saying I don't play any cash lineups at all, but I am more of a GPP guy at the end of the day.
Just to explain on that, GPP is more of the tournament format where
Yes.
it scales down in prize money, whereas cash usually half win and it's a double up. So you can either
Yep.
double, triple. I think it scales up a little bit from there, but it's not. You don't have as much to win as big for as little as a buy-in.
Yeah, the cash lineups are more, are you play safer lineups to get a smaller return on investment, whereas with the GPP lineups or the general prize pool tournaments, you're trying to be in the top 25% and get a lot higher return on investment, but you're doing so at a much larger risk.
Absolutely. Go ahead,
So
average.
wait. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So in the last format that you said there, where you said you're trying to get in the top 25%, would you say that it's more strategical there to hunt your dogs, that your low ownership? What I mean? Like when you're trying to find that, make sure you're going to be in the top 25% and you're looking at two fighters. Do you lean to the guy with less ownership if you think they can both do it because it sets you apart? It puts you ahead of the field, right?
Oh yeah, I think ownership, especially in those big prize pools, are one of the most important things because you're trying to get different, you're trying to be unique, and um, again, when you're looking to find, when you're comparing two underdogs, not only to take in their ownership, but also at what percentage do they get that first round finish? What percentage do they have that high ceiling? And you're really trying to figure out, okay, what risk am I having here? And by doing so, what am I giving up, right? When I'm comparing two fighters, or for this instance, this was one I was asked a lot last weekend. When you have, in this case, it's favorites, but Gilbert Burns or Gregory Rodriguez right beside each other on price tags. Although Rodriguez might have been a bit more popular last weekend, he had first round finish upside, but he didn't have that same type of security, right? He was probably going to go out there, he was going to get a finish himself or get finished. Whereas I thought Gilbert Burns was either going to get a finish himself or lose a decision, right? I didn't think he had that same insecurity as well. So you have to compare their not only their paths to victory, but the same way they're going to lose, and take that into account as well as the ownership as well.
So I have a question for you, Gordo. How are you? Do you have a way that you know to? Sorry if I cut you off, average. I thought you were done with your question. Do you have you figured out a way to find out ownership for them before the competition begins, before they give you it? Like, how do you go about figuring out the ownership?
No one will ever know ownership for sure, but you can get a general grasp based on, line movement, and the same way that you can hear people talking about it online. But not only have I been doing it myself for a few years, but also there are many great websites out there who will project it for you and are usually pretty spot on when it comes to that. Daily Fan MMA being one of them, and it's not going to be a perfect science, but I mean you're able to get a good grasp of who you think is going to be a popular underdog, right? Like if you had to think who is going to be more popular last week, someone like Lauren Murphy or someone like Ismail Bonfim, right? You're able to think who's going to attract more of these ownerships, who fits in better, and um, these websites also help out with that.
What do you do like in a pick'em scenario? Like, which way do you tend to lean?
Oh, pick'ems are fun because you're able to slot each one of them in. And in a case last week where it was Moreno versus Figgy, I will admit I did have more Figueiredo exposure, and that was to my own downfall. But it was also because I knew that Moreno was a very, very popular option, and I knew that although he was an underdog on DraftKings, he was a favorite on the money line, meaning he was going to have a lot more ownership. So I took the shot on Figueiredo in some lineups to try to be a bit different, to try to gain a leg up on the competition. And you know what? That did fail me. But in these head-to-head pick'em situations, you have to figure out, okay, what is their path to victory? And in my opinion, although I was wrong, I did think Figueiredo had some decent finish upside and coming at low ownership. So when I'm looking at the pick'ems, I look at their path to victory, which one of them can score more points in a win, and then which one's going to come at lower ownership as well.
Okay, so I'm not going to shift too much from that, but would you don't have to tell us this if you don't want. So like what is the ideal fighter for you? Meaning when you're like, all right, this guy's going to go the distance and it's probably going to set records. Like Max Holloway goes 5, his volume is going to be crazy, probably going to rack up points. Or is your perfect guy, one round, he's probably going to knock this dude out, cash it fast, get the big points and go home. Like what is when you see that type of fight, when you're capping the fights and you see that one, you're like, all right, that guy's got to make the list. No matter what, he's got to be on the list. What is that criteria for you?
Well, I'll give you two. First of all, my favorite fighters to target in DraftKings, along with almost everybody else, are those high volume takedown machines. Those Merab Dvalishvilis, those Jonathan Pierce, those guys who are going to go out there and if they win a decision, they're going to go out there and score what 130, 150 because they're going to get takedown. And the way DraftKings scoring works is you get 5 points of takedown, and those rack up, right? The more you get, the more people who are able to get back up and then take it down again are going to score the best. So we've seen slates where Merab's absolutely broken the slate because they're able to do stuff like that. Those fighters who have that upside, who maybe don't have the most control on the ground, but are able to get takedowns over and over and over again, have really good ceilings in both finishes and in decision wins, and those are my favorite types of fighters to target. But another thing, not only fighters, but the fights you like to target are those ones like last weekend, those Craig versus Walkers, those McKinney versus Bonfils, the one where it's like minus 200 to end of the
Who
first
invited
round.
Bill
So
Dennis? Fuck that nigga. He's a bitch. Fuck that nigga on their homies, nigga. Fuck
Who
Bill
is
Dennis.
on the
bitch.
Okay, then.
Hey, kick this guy. Who the fuck is this guy?
Shit, nigga.
Hey, Wayne, shut the
I got
fuck
him. I
up.
got
Kick
him out
this
of
guy.
here. It was that Wayne guy.
Yeah, I kicked him.
I didn't even know Dylan was listening, to be honest.
Yeah, sorry about that, Dylan. He's not one of us, bro. We don't speak to our listeners like that.
Yeah,
sorry, Gordos. We didn't mean for that to happen.
Man. That's ridiculous. Anyways, sorry about that, Gordo. I didn't even realize that guy jumped on there, man. Sorry about that.
No problem. Where was I? Okay, yeah, talking about those fighters who end like minus 200, minus 300 to end that first round, where both of theirs path to victories are going to score 100, 110 points because they have that first round finish potential, like the Craigs, like the Walkers. Those are also great to target as well. But to me, DraftKings Gold are those high takedowns, high volume fighters who are going to go out there and never stop pushing forwards and score a lot of points in the process.
Okay, so how do I word this? So would you prefer the guy that's going to probably get 3-4 takedowns and get the finish in the second round, or the guy that you think is going to take him down all 3 rounds and go to the decision and dominate him? I know that's hard because like there's Khabib levels of domination and then levels below that, but like if you knew a guy was going to go in there and likely go the distance but just absolutely dominate him, is he more valuable to you than a guy who's probably going to dominate him for a round and a half with takedowns and then get the finish?
Yeah, it's all situational, but sometimes you want those guys to go the distance because they just give you more times to accumulate points, right? In a case where you can have someone like Bonfim who's going to go out there and probably win in that second round, if anything, and score decent process. Well, do you want him or a guy like Merab who's going to go out there 3 rounds and put up takedowns after takedown every single round? Well, I want the guy who has more time to work, right? But it's all situational. It depends on salary, depends on ownership once again. But if you got those DFS gold, like you like to say, sometimes you don't mind them going the whole 15 in order to accumulate points.
Yeah, that just, I don't do a lot of it. That just seems like the guy that you would want to me. I'm probably going to start doing some of it because Trace has been in my ear about it, and now we've been talking to a few guys, and it sounds as fun as it was before, except I didn't win before, so eventually it becomes not fun. Yeah, that's just as honest as I can be about that. Uh, Last question I had on my list. What is the single most important factor when trying to balance a lineup? I know you've talked a lot about your lineups and how you do it, so I know that's been covered pretty well, but what is the one thing? Is it making sure that, like max entries? So let me stop there. If you're doing max entries, do you at some point just start covering the combinations? Like, is there ever a point where you just, you know what, I can get 10 more lineups in here and I don't even care if these guys, if I believed in these guys or not, it fits this way, it fits that way, it fits this way, it fits that way. Um, or is it more important for you to have those like home players, those pick guys, and just stick with them?
To me, if you are max entering, one of the most important things isn't who you're going to include, but who you're going to exclude. So if I'm building these lineups and I'm building a lot of them, well, there may be some fighters who I almost don't want to have any of, fighters who I don't think have a high ceiling at all. A fighter who I think will never come close to the optimal lineup, whether that be someone like um, Laura Murphy last week, or some people who I just want to X out completely, I will stay away from them. For me, I had very, very low ownership on someone like Simon Oliveira last week because I didn't think he had takedown upside and stuff like that. So I don't really pay too much attention to who I'm including. Of course, I'm going to want to pay attention at what levels I have everybody, but more so of just who I want to get rid of completely, who I don't want to have in at all, or who I want to have less accounts of. So I always start off my slate by Xing out as many fighters as I can, and then going from there, seeing how many lineups I want to build after.
Man, I feel like I pulled a slick move and got you to tell us something maybe you shouldn't tell us there. That seems like a good move. Trace, go ahead.
Yeah, I think my last question's do you take contest payout into consideration when selecting, or do you prefer the top heavy payouts, or like the 10% to first and scale down from there?
Um, you know what? It depends again on the slate, and I don't want to take the coward's way when answering these questions, but it truly does, right? Like if I don't feel confident enough in a lineup to want to max enter these really big competitions, well, I'm going to stay more to the safer side, play the smaller risk ones, right? But if I'm feeling like I have a decent edge, I'm liking the lineup builds I have. Well, I'm okay to go all in with my lineups. I'm okay to take the risk on the higher percentile payouts and go for the big money, right? Because if you are playing GPP, sometimes you are willing to take that risk, and it hasn't failed me too much so far. So I'm okay with playing those higher risk, high rewards tournaments.
Yeah, that's everybody in this chat, basically. We say we're going to talk, but we never do.
As
Marin,
much
what you
free love
got?
does cash
Hey,
line as
Marin,
the
welcome to the
GPP.
mic, brother. What you got?
Hey, what's up, guys? I mean, I just stayed back listening because I haven't really done DFS or any kind, not even like fantasy football or anything like that. I just don't know much about it. So, but I just had a quick question. I mean, since we're all talking about MMA, but it has happened more lately than before. But like, I don't know how many players are in the lineup for you guys, but how does last minute fight cancellations affect your lineups or anything like that?
Oh yeah, well when you're building lineups, that could be the most important thing because those salaries are put out Wednesday, Tuesday night, and if there's a fight to fall through on Thursday night and they have a short notice replacement, that fighter is going to stay at the same salary. And it happened a lot that very first week, whereas you had people like Dan Argueta, who was a minus 500 favorite, but he was only $8,600. Well, that's going to play a big factor into it. So when you have these short notice replacements, those fighters who are going to stay on the card are going to keep their same salary, but they're going to have different matchups. So sometimes those salaries are just completely incorrect, and you're going to have to factor that into your lineup building. In this case, when you have 6 fighters that you have to put in every single week, you hope sometimes that there's not too many fight cancellation because that'll really change the way you're targeting it. But sometimes there's nothing you can do. Sometimes you have to play into it. And there's been famous weeks where RDA got a short notice replacement, Renato Moicano, but RDA was still at $7,500. And although he was a huge minus 200 favorite, he was at a huge underdog price tag. So although I wasn't too big of a fan of him versus an original opponent, when he's at that price tag, when he has that upside, you're going to have to play him, and that's going to change your whole lineup build. So it's something that you really have to pay attention to.
Is that a hard rule? They always stay at the same price on DraftKings?
Once they're locked in, they will not be switched.
So
So
does the replacement opponent assume their opponent's salary no matter what, or do they get their own set salary?
they do get their own set salary.
Okay, so even though your fighter is locked in because his opponent was canceled, that opponent's salary will be determined when they enter then.
Yes, and usually those short notice replacements are underdogs. So if the fighter's already an underdog versus his previous opponent, but then gets a fight cancellation, gets a short notice replacement, and is now the favorite. Although he was the underdog prior, according to DraftKings pricing, he will remain the underdog according to DraftKings pricing, and his opponent will now be cheaper than him, probably.
Gotcha. So both guys will be going to be my question. So you won't pay over on the other. Okay, enough said. I understand completely. All right. Anybody else got anything they want to ask Gordo before we let him get out of here? We told him about 30 minutes, and I think we're right about there. But I think if we got any questions, he'll gladly take them. If not, all right, Gordo. I want to thank you very much for your time, brother. I'll actually be replaying this probably 2-3 times and taking some notes, and I hope to beat you at DFS and DM you with a screenshot of it. No hard feelings.
I would love that.
Test you're in. I'm going to follow you on your channel so I know which ones you enter so I can get in those ones.
For sure. Hey, I look forward to it, man. You know where to find me.
Yeah, speaking of that, Gordo, go ahead and tell them where they can find you. I know I gave you an intro at the beginning, but hit them with your YouTube and all your ads.
Yeah, and if you got, I heard you starting a competition or your own, right? Please tell everybody how to get a hold of you about that too.
Yeah, well, first of all, I appreciate the great introduction at the start. You're hyping me up a bit, so thank you for that. And for everybody's time today, hey, thank you for tuning in. If you got any more questions, feel free. Not only DraftKings, but I also do a lot of betting content like that. So you can check me out on Twitter at Gambles Gordo right here. There's me. And also on YouTube, Plays and Fade Sports. I put out weekly breakdowns, whether it be betting, DFS, a bit of both mixed together, and sometimes with some great co-hosts like Liam Picks Fights, and I've seen a couple other people in the chat who are people I do shows with. I appreciate doing that work with them. But you can find me there on YouTube, Plays and Fade Sports, and also anything that is related to me will be in my Twitter description. Check me out there. Last thing, Twitter DM is always open. Feel free to ask me any questions. And I do run that contest, although it is a year-long contest, so people will have missed out in the first couple of weeks of competition. But I'm always open to a late competitor. Everyone loves an underdog story, so hit me up in the DMs. I'd be happy to chat.
Now, Gordo, I know you had star power, but I didn't know you was going to bring Liam and Dylan Dennis up in here.
Bro,
yeah, man.
The whole team,
Dylan Dennis is like Charles Oliveira. He shows up in random spaces and just listens.
Hey, I loved it. Hey, Usman put his hand up before we let Gordo get out of here. He might want to ask Gordo something. Usman, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to spread a little love. I know I didn't do any tape for Dana White Contender Series this past season, but thanks to Gordo and Liam Pick Fights, I went ahead and came up that season. So go ahead and give them some love. Check out their channels.
Good, man. Good plug.
Very, very underrated channels for sure, especially like Gordo. He's the dude. I mean, I've seen him skyrocket as far as viewers and followers since then, but I mean, the guy's channel is very underrated. He's a sharp guy.
Hey, it's a tough space, even for the sharpest guys. I tell you what, I do all types of weird research. You guys know how much time I put into this space. Spotify has 1,260 podcasts dedicated strictly
nerd.
And I can vouch for Gordo as far as the DMs. I stay in that dude's DMs. He's good at getting back to people.
They it's a tough space, so follow these guys while they are here. Vinny, what you got?
I was just gonna say, how many did you say Spotify has? 12,000?
1,260 dedicated podcasts dedicated to MMA. I counted them today. Anyways, Gordo, before we take off talking about this other stuff, Gordo, you're welcome to hang around, but we're gonna get into UFC
recapping 283.
I thank you very much for your time, bro. I'm going to clip this. I'll put it on our YouTube channel that we just got going last week. I'll send you some links. I think I know how to tag you over there if that's possible. I'll try to do that. And thank you again, man.
Sounds good, man. Thanks for having me on. I'll come and I'll listen to you guys a bit, but the floor is all yours. And have a good rest of your day, guys.
Have a good one, brother.
Hey, I have a quick question for Gordo before you leave.
Sure.
Hey, not to say anything, but Canadian fighters are really bad.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Do you ever bet on them?
Man, sometimes you fall for the trap, and I might fall for that trap coming with my girl Jasmine Jurjevicic. I'm not sure gonna fight booked up here, which is never good. But no, I typically stay away from those Canadian fighters. We know their track records. We ain't got no GSP coming in anytime soon, so be careful. I know I've lost some coin on Charles Jourdain, so we're gonna be careful in 2023.
All right,
We're
Gordo.
actually
I gotta
probably
tell
trying
you
to get Jasmine on here.
before you get off the mic, this man has a Canadian fade that he talks about every week, and you just solidified it into infinity for him, whether you realized it or not. You solidified it into infinity for him, and I'm never going to hear the end.
Let's be fair, we were never going to not hear the end of it anyways, but now we re-revved those engines.
Hey, what happens when Lainez fights Malott, man? You got two Canadians back-to-back. How do you fade them?
Double knockout.
You got to flip a coin, man. You got to flip a coin on that one.
Nah, Vin, you got to take the draw there.
There you go.
Double knockout.
Yeah. Or don't bet.
Now, I don't subscribe to the Canadian fade, but I'm not going to lie, it has worked out in my favor.
Oh, I do not blame you, man. We're going to stick to putting out some championship hockey teams, and we'll stay at that.
Don't worry, Liam.
guessing
Brazil's here. We love Brazilians here.
That's number one rule, man. Got to stop Brazilian hate.
All right.
Okay.
I like that.
I'm gonna mute him out for a second.